Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that you please rise to start this event, that we have a moment of silence, and that we keep in mind all the men and women who serve us across our state, across our nation, and around the world, and then we will pledge the flag. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening and taking time out of your precious schedules. I'm Diane Douglas. I have the honor and privilege of serving you as Arizona's Superintendent of Public Instruction. It's so important to me that the community be heard. I am of the opinion that when we've made some very big changes to our education system, we did not hold the public hearings that I believe should have been held and that I always advocated for when I was on the school board when we were making major changes to policy and things. So that's what we're here for, is to give you that opportunity. And I'd just like to give you a little idea how the evening will go. First of all, many of you may have heard when I campaigned, I was not, shall we say, in favor of the current standards that are being used in Arizona. But I'll be honest with you, I do not have the ability as the superintendent to change that. That either comes from the legislature or it comes from the State Board of Education, but we can hear what's on your minds and make recommendations to both of those bodies, and that's what I intend to do. This is not about politics. This is not about any campaigns, past, present, or future. It's about how we move forward as Arizonans in the education of our children. So what we will do, again, is bring your recommendations back to the appropriate parties. I'd like to introduce everyone who's up here on stage with me, and then just give them a moment to welcome you all, and then we'll go over a few ground rules, and then the rest of the evening will be yours. So with me up here, I have Representative Leach from LD11. We have Representative Ackerley. Sure, go ahead. Thank them for their work. They all work very good. So, Representative Ackerley from LD2, Senator Crowley from LD9, Senator Bradley from LD10. I have Dr. Lila Williams. She is an Associate Superintendent with ADE for Accountability, Assessment, Adult Education, and Dr. H.T. Sanchez from TUSD Superintendent.
So where is the red light here that goes on when I'm done? He's kidding me already about going first. My name is Vince Leach. I'm a representative, state representative in the House of Representatives, LD11. LD11 is Marana, Oro Valley, goes north up on to Saddlebrook, Arizona City, and the city of Maricopa. I'm pleased to be here, to be part of this listening tour tonight. And I think what you see here collectively is not only the great turnout, but as you look down the members here on the stage, we have members from various districts. We have members from the House, we have members from the Senate, we have members from the education community, and it's bipartisan on our part from those of us in the House and the Senate. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to hearing your questions as we go forward with the evening.
Thank you, and I think this is going to get awkward if we all come around to the front, so I'll just stand right here. My name is Chris Ackerley. I represent Legislative District 2, which covers in Tucson, south of 22nd Street, all the way down the I-19 corridor, and then all of Santa Cruz County. This is my first term in the House. It has been an honor to serve the district. As a day job, I am a high school physics teacher, so I am well aware of the challenges that are facing education. And Well, it has been frustrating over the past couple of years, including this year. I am encouraged that perhaps the political will is starting to develop to actually make the substantial changes that are required to move our education forward, our education system forward. So I am looking forward to the conversation. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Welcome, I'm Steve Farley, State Senator for District 9, which is everything from Speedway to the Oro Valley town limits and from Speedo Canyon to I-10. But more importantly, I'm a proud parent of a daughter at Tucson High Magnet School. So this is all very personal to me, as well as personal to most of you, and it should be personal to absolutely every citizen of Arizona right now. I think it's a great testament to the importance of education, how much the public understands the importance of education. To see so many people here tonight on a rather warm evening in which you could be spending the next 2.5 hours doing something a lot more interesting somewhere else. But this is absolutely vital to our future. And I really want to thank the superintendent for putting on this listening tour, and I really encourage you to don't mince words tonight. Say what's on your mind and say what needs to happen in order to make Arizona the best place it can be. And to my mind, that starts with a great education system that is well supported, well funded, and well managed. So thank you for coming. Please let your voices be heard.
Thank you. I'm Dave Bradley from District 10. I thank Superintendent Douglas very much for arranging this, Cream College for letting us use this beautiful facility, and our police officers here. Thank you guys for coming out as well. You know, I agreed to do this because I want people to speak up as well. And one of the things that I've tried to emphasize in the last few months is we got to stop speaking past each other. We have to listen to each other. You've got to stop screaming and be clear about what your expectations are and your hopes are for our children. We have that in common. You cannot disagree unless you first agree. And we can agree that we are here for our children. We want the best for them. And so let's speak to each other, you know, civilly. Let's do this right. Let's listen to each other. Be clear about our expectations and our hopes for our children. And thank you very much for coming.
Hi, welcome. It's wonderful to see so many folks out here tonight. This is really a pleasure to be here, and especially for me since I am a resident of Tucson, so it's a great city, I think, and wonderful things going on here. So tonight I am looking forward to hearing many of your comments. Myself and there are 4 other associate superintendents who work directly for Superintendent Douglas. And it's really our hope and our goal is that we can learn as much as we possibly can and hear your concerns so that we can have an opportunity to take that information and think about the work that we do going forward and also to support the superintendent's missions.
I see quite a few Tucson Unified School District people in the audience, so thank you all for taking the opportunity to come out. I also see one of my governing board members, Mr. Waters. Also, thank you for coming out. I truly want to thank Superintendent Douglas for the opportunity to get an amazing panel of people together to listen. Usually panels like this do a whole lot of talking and very little listening, and it's nice to see the script flip to where we take note of what's being said. And so I look forward as well to hearing. I'm going to say something briefly in Spanish. Tenemos servicios de intérpretes. Si alguien necesita esos servicios, se puede levantar su mano. All right. I guess we don't need interpretation services, and I'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you all for being here and participating this evening. Just briefly, we have school board, at least one school board member in the audience. Would you please stand up and be recognized? Do we have any city council members? Please stand up and be recognized. If there are any other elected officials, either county or judges, please stand up and be recognized. We'd like to thank you for your service. Thank you so much. Okay, so just very briefly, the rules are, this is about K-12 education. But it can be anything that has to do with K-12 education. It can be standards, it can be assessment, it can be curriculum, funding, whatever on your mind is what we are here to hear about. This is a two-part tour. We're here now to listen to you, and then I intend to come back, and you're all welcome to join me in the fall if you're available, to go over what we heard. What are we able to do with the recommendations and the comments you've given them? Some may result in legislation that comes to your legislators and make changes to education. So maybe things that go to the State Board of Ed, or maybe discussions that I'll have with our governor at some point in time. We'll be back in the fall, and my intent is to do this every year that I'm in office. I'm privileged to hold this office, so that you don't have to feel like this is a one-shot deal and we weren't able to get our thoughts, or I thought of something else. I'm committed to hearing from our community the whole time. There are cards if you'd like to speak. This is not like a school board meeting or a city council meeting where you have 2 minutes and talk as fast as you can. We're really not putting a time limit per se on it. We ask you to keep your comments brief because we want to hear everyone here who would like to speak. So if you take the mic for too long, then you may hurt someone else who wants to come forward. But we really don't want to impede you. And we also want to hear, unlike school board or city council, and I say this because I was on the school board, so I know we did this, we often say, well, if someone's already made your comment, please don't come forward and speak. But we do want to hear you. You don't have to reiterate the exact same comment, but I'd like to hear it. A comment is made. I want to know, do 2 people think that way? 10, does the whole auditorium think that way? So if you just say, you know, I agree with that comment and add up something new, that would be wonderful. There's forms if you choose not to come up and speak, but you'd like your comments to be considered, you can just write them down. You'll see up here throughout the night, we're going to have ways that you can get a hold of us and give continuing feedback. So if you get home tonight and think, oh, I should have said that, don't worry, it's never too late. You're not going to close the door on it. And the last thing I would tell you is that for this evening, questions are going to be deemed rhetorical. So if you ask a question, if it's a very simple question, we'll put the answer up on the website as quickly as we can. But if it's more complex, then you'll get the answer when we come back in the fall. But it's not, we want to hear from you. This is your time. So we may ask a question if we need to clarify a point, but other than that, the evening is yours. So with that, Charles is going to be our moderator this evening, and I thank you for that. And we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Just want to reiterate what the superintendent said. Thank you all for being here. My name is Charles Sack. I'm also with the Department of Education. The way that we're going to be doing this, just to make sure that we get people a chance to speak if they'd like to, I'm going to read off a group of 5 names. And if you're one of those folks, if you'd like to kind of approach the front of the auditorium, that way when the person in front of you is finished speaking, you'll be able to start speaking when they're done, and we can keep things moving so that we can hear from everyone. So with that, I'm going to read off the first group of names. I have Lucy Messing, Peggy Knowles, Michael Gordy, Julie Eros Thornton, and Stephen Linder, our first 5. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, my name is Lucy Messing. I am a retired teacher from the Tucson Unified School District. I currently serve on the Arizona Education Association Retired State Board. Public education is a passion, and we are committed to making sure that our children are served appropriately. So the first thing I'd like to say is that they are underfunded. We know that the courts have ordered for the money to be paid that was taken from them, and that is the first priority. And so we ask whatever can be done, and I know our legislators are here, and they are the ones who can make the difference. And by working together with the legislature, we hope that that can come to pass. There are cuts that are being that are occurring now that are affecting our children. Children are the future. We need to do right by them. So that is the first thing. is that we would like for the court order to be followed and the money appropriately provided to them. The next thing is that I know there has been a lot of talk about the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards. This was put together by governors from across the nation. It is something that will make our students competitive in the country. And while things are not perfect sometimes when they're rolled out the first time, and perhaps need a little tweaking, the worst thing that can happen is for those to be taken away and to start over again. Our teachers are under so much pressure, and they are constantly having to go through a new idea, a new mandate, something that are usually not funded anyway. And so it puts additional pressure on our teachers and our students when they have to go through new standards, etc. I'm also concerned about the high stakes testing. I'm so glad that Ames is now not there. When I was a teacher in high school, and I saw students who passed every single class, but did not pass the Ames, and then were not allowed to walk with their colleagues. It was heartbreaking. So high stakes testing is also not the answer. So I hope that we can move away from that and provide a better setting for our children. I want to thank you, Superintendent Diane Douglas, for being here and for having this opportunity to speak to you. We do hope that some of the information that you received today will somehow be able to come to pass. And I know that you're going to be hearing a lot of good things that are happening in public education, because in spite of the lack of funding, our teachers do an amazing job. And so they deserve all they can get. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peggy Knowles. Madam Superintendent, thank you very much for this opportunity and for all your fellow panelists for being here to listen to us today. I am a volunteer music teacher in Oracle School, and I'm a very passionate advocate for our children, and I'm here to implore you, while I understand, Ms. Douglas, your hands are tied on Common Core, but I implore all of you who have the power to do anything to save our children from this experience, to please, please, please not bless disappointment.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Douglas, members on the panel, and pro-education supporters, hopefully all sitting on the dais, as well as all of us behind me. My name is Michael Gordy. I retired in 2008 after 28 years with USD. Thank you for coming to Tucson to listen to our thoughts on public education in Arizona. Years ago, at an education forum held by then Representative Marion Pickens, one panelist, Lawrence Cohen, said, maybe we should think about what we want coming out of our high schools before we build them. Followed by, here in America, we say, don't just stand there, do something. Buddhists, on the other hand, say, don't just do something, stand there. In 2016, I plan on running for Pima County Superintendent of Public Schools, doing something very similar to this event, but in smaller meetings held in homes where we'll listen to what students, parents, educators, business people, and anyone else who attends wants coming out of our elementary, middle, and high schools. The intent is to come up with a plan for public education in Pima County. And thank you again for beginning a similar dialogue for education in Arizona. When I was teaching, we had Arizona standards based on national norms, and a high-stakes test aims to see how our students in schools measured up, grading schools with an A through F marks, with some believing we should reward the A's, in essence punishing the lower achievers with less funding. Now that we have the Arizona College and Career Ready standards based on the Common Core standard developed not by the federal government, but by the bipartisan but now heavily Republican National Governors Association. Again, there's a high-stakes test, high-stakes, and even more expensive test. This past Sunday, May 24th, the Arizona Daily Star published Kindergarten Teachers See Benefits of New State Standards by Brittany Betterton, a veteran teacher at Elvira Elementary in Sunnyside. She explains how the ACCRS should not be, focuses on the why and allows teachers to teach and employ varied strategies for solving problems. She believes, and I agree, this encourages high achievement and critical thinking. I would encourage reading her article and would add, I think we need to place far more emphasis on the day-to-day learning and instruction and far less on the non-diagnostic tests given in the spring. The focus of everyone in education must be supporting classroom teachers and other school building employees and volunteers. That's everyone that's not in a building needs to focus on what's happening in our schools. I will hear many more good ideas at the House meetings, but I think they would include things like bringing back the arts. The middle school I retired from now has band, orchestra, and PE as the only possible electives kids can take. That's crime. We also need to have recess and fitness in the elementary schools. We need learning through projects and group activities, understanding the process of learning rather than just listed outcomes. Studying our universe, understanding things like scarcity, conservation, stewardship, and interdependence of physical and biological worlds. Additionally, our joint technical education district, JTED, program needs to be better funded and expanded into middle schools in order to ensure that students can apply thinking skills to the day-to-day challenges of life in the 21st century and beyond. Judy Klinko wrote an editorial also in the Arizona Daily Star back in April 21st of this year, talking about fully funding JTED. Tragically, our legislature also cut funds to this program in K-12 universities and community colleges. And ironically, our Speaker of the House not only led this assault, but has since taken his car to a local JTED repair facility and not only wanted them to fix it, but asked for a discount. I'd say we now have an Arizona anecdote to add to the explanation of chutzpah, often described as a person who, after murdering parents, asks for mercy as an orphan. We have much to do to restore public education in our state. Appreciate that you are beginning this journey by listening, but we also must defend our public schools and give them needed resources so that all children, not just the wealthy, have access to high-quality education to prepare them for an increasingly complex world where sustainability, cooperation, and interdependence are crucial to our survival. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia Thornton, and I am an education liaison for Foster Ed Arizona. We are a pilot here in Pima County, and we just wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing. We are a proven model to improve educational outcomes for children in foster care. Currently, we are working with children as they enter the foster care system. We provide wraparound services by creating teams of DCS, the schools, behavioral health. We encourage parents to be a part of this as well. And what we do is we establish an educational champion for this team. And that person is advocating for the students, mentoring the students, and providing tutoring. As the child starts moving towards reunification with the parents, this educational champion is also mentoring the parents to encourage them to be better advocates for their students. We are finding that what we're doing is really benefiting the students. We are seeing better outcomes as the year progresses. We're seeing better attendance. We're seeing children getting signed up for college, which is really cool this year. We've had 2 students who will be attending Pima College. And we would just like to thank the Department of Education for participating as one of our major partners in demonstrating that this program and its benefits is only going to further help our students here in Arizona. Thank you.
Before Linda speaks, I'd like to read off our next group of 5. So I have Claire Morgan, Eric Safir, Ramon Montano, Beth Slane, and Darlene Rowe will be the next 5.
Good evening, Superintendent Douglas and distinguished guests of the panel. My name is Steve Linder. I'm speaking to you as a retired teacher who who spent 37 years in the classroom. Superintendent Douglas, I applaud your willingness to travel across the state and listen to what citizens of Arizona are telling you about the current status of education. But this is only if you are truly listening and not using these events as an excuse to dismantle the Arizona college and career readiness standards. These standards are working and they're successful. They were designed by a group of eligible people who were supported by a majority of state governors, many Republicans, and not by the federal government. These standards will give the students of Arizona equal footing if they are to be compared to students in other states. It is a disservice to the state to be involved in your petty disputes and eventual lawsuits involving control of the Board of Education. It is a distraction and a waste of time and resources. You should be doing all you can to influence the governor and legislature to settle the lawsuit concerning the money owed to the students of Arizona. I certainly hope that you will return to your elected purpose, and that is being an advocate for the education of all the public school students of Arizona. Thank you.
Very briefly, I did want to mention we do have signing services available. I don't know if anyone is in need of the signing services. Maybe. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Superintendent, for having this open forum. As a teacher with the Upward Bound program in Tucson.
Sorry, could I ask everyone to state your name before you start speaking?
My name is Claire Morgan. I'm a teacher with the Upward Bound program in Tucson, and I'm concerned about the education our public school students are receiving in English composition, the art of argument, and public speaking. The students that I am working with, and primarily I'm working with students from 3 high schools and 1 in the TUSD district, a charter school, and then 1 in the amphitheater school district. They cannot write proper sentences or paragraphs. They do not know the difference between thesis statements and topic sentences. They cannot do oral presentations. They are told in AP English classes to write in an unbiased manner, and they will no longer be learning how to write argumentative essays. They do not know the parts of speech or what makes a good sentence. I read the Common Core English standards. They are not standards. True standards are like the ones written by Dr. Sandra Stotsky, a set of scope and sequence standards from all the way from 1st through 12th grades. They're excellent. Arizona needs to eliminate the vague standards of Common Core and adopt those by Dr. Stotsky or by something very similar. Those are standards that I've actually taught English since 1973 using in a private school. And there's not a single student that I worked with that didn't, when he went to Pima College or the U of A, didn't have to go into remedial English or anything else. But they knew how to do oral presentations, they knew how to debate, they knew how to write. Furthermore, the art of argument and debate needs to be reintroduced. Business people will tell you the importance of oral presentation and of being able to write and defend a product that maybe they want or an idea that they have. Also, students need to learn to think through their positions and communicate them, as well as being taught how to notice fallacies. They're not being taught these things. Thank you for your consideration of these matters.
Good evening, and thank you so much for coming down here. My name is Eric Saphir, and I'm involved in education in a variety of ways. I teach here at this campus. I've been teaching here political science for the last 20 years. Some of you may know my predecessor, Margaret Kensky, who unfortunately just passed away a few days ago. And I have have been very interested in education. I was born and raised abroad in Germany because my father liked Waldorf education, which is an alternative approach, enough that he put a 10-year professorship to teach, to move to Germany to teach high school physics and math at one of those schools. And so upon moving to Tucson to teach here, I eventually got more interested in K-12 education as I got married and had my own children. And I realized that there was there was a nice private Waldorf school here in town, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if all children whose parents wanted an alternative approach to education had that option. I've been, for decades, really been very interested in school choice and opportunity for all, inclusiveness, and having choices for parents other than the one neighbor thought of school, which was the old model. Whether it's open enrollment or what have you, basically having choices and having accountability primarily through parents having the option of sending their kids to one school or as opposed to another school. I think that is ultimately the best accountability mechanism. And so I want to speak a little bit about what I think Arizona is doing well and could be doing even better, and that is devolution and parental choice in education. So, we have more charter schools for relative to the population than any other state in the nation. We have open enrollment. Increasingly, we have, through various tax credits, more choice in private education as well, and so on. And I think parents throughout the state really appreciate having those options. I'm very ecumenical in my support of education of my own children, exemplify that. So about a decade ago, I got involved in an effort to bring Waldorf education to all by being involved in a group that started a nonprofit charter Waldorf school here in town called Desert Sky Community School. My son started in kindergarten first year and was graduated from there and continued thanks to the tax credits at the private Waldorf school for a few more years. And again, being very ecumenical, I'm excited that he's going to University High this fall in the Tucson school district. So what I would like to see is, and again, Waldorf is just one of many alternative approaches. Many of you may be more familiar with such approaches as Montessori. What Waldorf emphasizes is arts, music, foreign languages, an immersion approach to academics where the kids spend 3 to 5 weeks studying one core academic subject for the first 2 hours of the day, and it's common in Europe, the grades teacher lives with them. So the first grade teacher may stay with the same students all the way potentially up to 8th grade, which I think is a wonderful learning environment. And so Waldorf schools have now been around for 100 years, just about 100 years, as is Montessori. And what I would like to see the legislature consider going forward into the future is to move more in the direction of devolution and accountability of schools to parent choice, rather than going the opposite direction of trying to overly standardize curriculum and overly standardize the accountability measures. So I have not even seen a multiple choice question before I took my SATs before coming to the US in '86, and yet I graduated first in my discipline at the university I attended, and got a full ride to graduate school, and I feel this is happening with my son as well. So I think we need to move away from this idea that we can design one best system and then squeeze all pegs into square pegs and rectangular pegs into those square holes, and to have trust that there are a variety of approaches out there that can really work. And specifically, what I think we should do is that going forward as a state, and hopefully the legislature will be open to that, is to maybe have some sort of opt-out or parallel system with accountability where schools that are following a recognized alternative approach that has a long record of success, such as Montessori, such as Waldorf, not some fly-by-night operation that someone just cooked something up overnight, but something that's been around for decades that has a real track record of success, where there are accreditation systems, accountability systems, to make sure that those schools are providing a quality education, that the state would provide a little bit more leeway to those schools in educating our children. I very much appreciate you coming down here and having an open mind. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Douglas of Tucson. My name is Ramon Montaño, and I'm a retired educator, and I'd like to speak on the subject of Mexican American Studies in Tucson Unified School District. I'm not involved in Mexican American Studies, and I'm speaking just as an observer of what I've heard and read in the last few years. A couple of your predecessors have accused TUSD's Mexican American Studies of fostering fear and hatred toward Anglo-Americans. And from my point of view, that is not true. It's telling the truth about what's happened in the past. It's about sharing what you know about what's happening now and what can we do to change what's happened in the past and what's happening now. I grew up here in Tucson, and I attended school, and we had, at that time, which was a long time ago, we were discussing in my social studies classes in high school about the germination of this Mexican American studies and culture, what was happening, and we talked about Cesar Chavez, we talked about the brown race, and we talked about school walkouts, and we were excited, and we even had a school walkout. Stand up if you believe it. And nowadays, if students want to think about walking out, the governor's liable to call out the National Guard. So it's a situation that's changed completely. When I was in school, I was also taught about the conquest of the Americas and the colonization of the Americas. I was taught about the war for independence, about the war between the states. I was taught about the world wars. And at that time, it did not breed in me any hatred towards Spaniards, Portuguese, the Catholic Church, England, Southerners, Germany, Italy, Japan. I held a little bit of resentment toward England, but after I grew up, that's so. I just want to say that you have to give these students a little bit more credit about that they can think themselves. They're not given enough credit, and when we hear about these things, yeah, we get angry about the injustices. Yeah, kids, that's not right. You have to condemn that too. And yeah, they want to walk out to protest. That's the American way. So I do not feel that this program has to be choked, beaten, and tied down, and students not getting the truth. Okay, that's my belief. Sometimes swallowing the truth does hurt, but we get over it and we learn from it. So the educators try and enlighten the kids about the world around them, going to teach them about the past, and then how we can make a better world out of it. Okay, but now we have a school district that's in fear of its funding. We have teachers who are in fear for their careers, and we have students and teachers who feel muzzled about what they can talk in the classroom. So it's this atmosphere of fear going on in some of our schools. And that's not good. We're here to enlighten and to expand minds and to say, this is what happened. And, we're not going to teach you to hate people, but this is true. I mean, all this has inspired music, literature, poetry, art, and this is what the kids have something to grab onto. And it's going to be something not truthful if we keep muzzling it down like we are right now. And I hope that you, in your position now, will have some greatness about it, that you can do something to let us go back to what it was before. All right. When, you know, it's almost akin to, this is a little overboard, but to book reading. You know, you can't read the truth, you can't see the truth, but we want to know the truth. Okay, so I would like for you to reconsider what's happened in this program, and maybe we can restore it back to what it was before. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Dex Slade, and I am a 14-year public educator in the state of Arizona. I'm a national board certified teacher. I have a master's degree in my content area and also a master's degree in secondary education with an emphasis on curriculum. And I tell you my personal background because what I want to talk about today is what it means to be college ready and how that relates to the assessments in our schools. College readiness cannot be determined by a single data point. In fact, the AZ merit, benchmark testing, AIMS, any of the standardized tests that are given in our high schools, colleges don't care. They don't request AIMS scores. The military doesn't care whether or not they scored high on their benchmark assessment when they were a sophomore. No boss is going to ask a person applying, so how did you do on the AZ merit? How did that standardized test make you feel? What they do care about are our students' grades. They want to know what their GPA was. They wanted to know, what grade did you get in math? How many math classes did you take? Did you actually get into math further than Algebra 1? Did you take calculus? Did you take honors or AP classes or dual credits? That is what is interesting to universities, to the military, and to our employers. They want to know how kids are able to think, how they can rationalize over an issue and work together as a community. They don't really care about how well they answer a multiple choice test or how well they can read a short passage and write a 2 to 3 sentence response on a standardized test that is not assessed by them or by the teachers that they know and trust. They care about their grades. So I say this because I teach in Tucson Unified, I teach at Tucson High, and I teach the dual credit Writing 101 course. This year I had 156 students say they were interested in taking Writing 101 next year as either their junior or senior English class. Out of those 156 students, 71% of them placed on the AccuPlacer or the Compass test into Writing 101. And next year I will be teaching 4 sections of a college class in our high school. These students have demonstrated through their hard work and dedication and their personal motivation that they are college ready. Nothing they do in a standardized test is going to change that. However, I give up close to 9 days of instructional time to standardized testing. That is not fair to me as an instructor. It is not fair to my students, and it's not fair to Pima Community College, which issues their credits. Because Pima Community College isn't interested in their score in an AZ merit test. They are interested in how well they are able to demonstrate their ability to write and the grades they get, because that is ultimately what determines whether or not they receive that credit. So we can spend a lot of time giving standardized testing, and while that does create data, and data is part of how we build our curriculum and build our instructional plans, that one data point should not determine the success or failure of any student or any teacher for that matter. It is naive of me to think that standardized testing is going to go away anytime soon. However, just like we need more pathways for students to understand what it means to be college and career ready, like dual credits, advanced placement classes, honors classes, and promoting them not only to the students, but to their parents and community, so they understand what the expectations are for those classes and how they do get them college and career ready. I'm naive to think that standardized testing is going to go away. However, I would like to think that we are open enough as a society and as a a community of educators to realize what colleges are looking for, what universities are looking for, what the military is looking for, and what employers are looking for are not people who can do multiple choice, but people who can read, write, communicate in group, articulate their ideas, and be responsible citizens. You can't judge that as really hard. Thank you.
I have Katie Bennett, Pam Barry Santos, William Krause, Edna San Miguel, and Kent Gill. Next slide.
Hi, my name is Darlene Rowe. Thank you so much for coming to Tucson. It's hard to get up to Phoenix to talk to you during the school year, although I have emailed a couple of you several times. I teach third grade at Coronado K School in the Ampi district. I'm a parent of an incoming CDO freshman and a proud member of our local, state, and national education association. I'm disappointed by the state of affairs in public education in Arizona for funding and for policies. I've been here in Arizona more than 20 years and it just seems to keep being a downward trend. I'm dismayed by the bickering that I've been reading about and seeing on the news in the Department of Education, the superintendent's office, between the legislators, the governor. There are other issues that we're dealing with, that our students are dealing with, that need to be addressed. The bickering is getting in the way. It seems like most leaders, those who are supposed to be in charge of education, are disconnected. There seems to be a discrepancy between what we know, the teachers know, the educators know, is really going on in our classrooms in the school, and what everyone else seems to think is going on in our classrooms and our schools. I'm dumbfounded that community members and leaders will just believe anything. We teach our students to search for evidence, to gather facts, but it doesn't seem like other people outside of education are doing that. I'm disheartened that teachers don't earn trust and respect. We serve our students, their parents, and the communities. I don't have a job and I don't have a career. This is the lifestyle I've chosen, and that's all I thought about since I was 3. I'm finishing my 23rd year of education. I'm distraught that there's talk about the standards being dismantled. You heard how they were really adopted. It was nationwide, governors and educators. I can't speak for every district, but I know amphitheaters put a lot of time, training, money into making sure the teachers are prepared to teach our students. It would be a disruption to the learning process to start all over again. I've taught to several sets of standards, and I'm confident that these are best preparing my students. My third graders learn to write narratives, informational text, persuasive text. They're reading fiction and nonfiction 50% each. They're reading closely. They're searching for evidence. They're gathering the evidence. They're digging really deep. They're asking the hard questions of themselves and each other. Same in math. There are mathematical practices. They're being taught to persevere, to talk the math language, to really understand what's going on, to get really deep in what they're learning. I was disturbed that the AZ merit tests were not a pilot test, but the actual test. My third graders were very confused by the formatting and the directions, and there was little that I could do because the test administrative directions prevent me from doing anything more than watching them. I'm disillusioned that after my 23rd year of teaching, I bring home less than $900 every 2 weeks. This is a noble profession, but I don't feel like it. I'm filled with disbelief that we're not all, governor, legislators, anyone who is in charge of what I do, my colleagues do, are not working toward a common goal, which is educating Arizona students. If you want to discuss with me, I have the whole summer at my disposal. I'm not grading papers, which is normally what I would be doing right now, and I'm not teaching students, but I'm definitely working all summer. You can reach me at drow@amfi.com. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie Bennett. I'm an educator. I've been really impressed by some of the things that I've heard today, speaking about cultural studies. And I've been disturbed by people thinking that if I'm teaching about Mexican heritage, I'm also teaching hate. I don't believe that that's true. I think that the reason that we have programs like that and the universities that have women's studies and Asian American studies, African American studies, those programs exist because we're not hearing about people who are different. We're not hearing about people of different cultures. So for somebody to want to encourage people to think about that within a high school level, instead of waiting until something tragic may or may not happen, I think that that's a great idea. I also think that bilingual education is something that our SEI programs and our ILLPs and everything that we have to do to satisfy state requirements comes from a little bit of a backwards way of thinking about things. I think that we vilify people who speak different languages. We are afraid that if somebody is not speaking English well enough to get by within a year, there's something wrong there, even though studies show that you cannot speak the academic language within 1 year to the standard that you need to when it's a second language. So we need programs that encourage English learning that does not vilify somebody who speaks Spanish as a first language, for example. I have several things that I've been thinking about as I've been listening to this. Standardized testing also is something that I think that we all agree that if all you're doing is picking A, B, or C, then that's what you're getting good at, is picking A, B, or C. If we must have standardized testing of some sort, or testing of achievement of some sort, I would be curious to find out what we would be assessing, how would we be assessing that? Are we going to assess it in a way that shows thinking skills? I work with middle school kids who are not raised to be critical thinkers. But one of the things that I enjoy about the Common Core standards is the emphasis on bringing things together. And I think that it has that potential to help create more critical thinkers. I think that we lack that right now. And it's very difficult to take somebody who has never been taught to think and raise them above the standard where they are right now. I'm also interested, if you do pursue something other than Common Core, what would be the evidence that you would use to pick something else? So if that does go away and we do try to replace it with something else, what will we replace it with? And by whose standards do we measure that? The other strength of Common Core that I believe in is that it was created by people who have a higher level of success than Arizona. Arizona is historically ranked very low as far as spending, as far as academic performance. So when we look to systems that are ranked higher, where their kids do better and understand more, that seems to me the wise approach, which is, I think, where the Common Core came from. So that, you know, again, lots of little things, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for having me here this evening. I appreciate all that you do in education, and again, I thank you. I'm here to speak on, my name is Edna Sandical. I'm here to speak on behalf of our students with Asperger's and high-functioning autism. 20 years ago, my son Christopher was born, and I was a high school teacher at Tucson High, and I was teaching fine arts, and I was in charge of the Taj Mahal Gallery at Tucson High School.
Christopher's birth was difficult. In his first, second year, he was having difficulty with just a club, he had a club foot, hand, he had difficulty walking, speech, and I knew I had quite a task once he was to approach school. And sure enough, once when he began school at Drachman Elementary, we started to see evidence of the Asperger's autism. He was actually diagnosed there at the time. At this point, I was at University of Arizona, of course, graduated Arizona Certified School Teacher. I trained under Dr. Greer under the Discipline-Based Art Education Program, DBAE, and the Curriculum Specialist under that program. 20 years ago, I had aspirations. I had great aspirations for my career, for my life, and was working on my master's degree as well, 16 years short of it. But at that point, I had to make a decision whether I was going to let that all go and take care of Christopher completely and solely. He needed me. So I left all aspirations to take care of him for the next 20 years. Where I've been for the last 20 years has been raising Christopher, educating him, seeing that ADA and rehab laws were applied properly for his care, seeing that the schools were prepared for him. There were many times he could walk off campus. And by the way, Asperger's are climbers. If you know those trees out at Drachman School, they're very tall, and he would climb up to the highest point. And by law, they weren't allowed to touch him. If they couldn't coach him down, I'd get a phone call and I'd climb up those trees and bring him down. Those are the kinds of things that I would do. As children of Asperger's mature, they run into a whole new set of problems. Girlfriends, friends, making friends, stuttering. It's endless. What I started to do is I created a support group in Santa Cruz County. I started meeting with parents, even up in Sahuarita, very affluent neighborhood, Sahuarita. I was in Tubac, I was in Rio Rico, I was talking to parents whose first language was Spanish. And what I had seen is these students actually were not in school. They were kept at home. It's one of those frustrating things to see. Because what I was able to show them was that Christopher was excelling. Christopher was growing. He was being educated. And so what I said to Christopher along the way, I guess you could say every morning I had to get up and be that cheerleader for Christopher's life. And I did. Every morning. I prayed for more strength every morning. So I said to Christopher along his lifetime, I said, Chris, when you turn 20 years old, you will be at the University of Arizona, and I will be done pretty much by this point. I will back off. Last year, Christopher walked up to me. He had turned 20 years old. Now, when they said, they'll hold you to it. In other words, after youth, adults will hold you to everything. So Christopher comes up to me right after his birthday. He says, Mom, you're fired. I turned 20. And I'm at the University of Arizona next semester. He's finishing Human Community College, actually in music. He is a Native American, plays the flute, piano, and studies psychology. And so then I looked at him and I said, well, Christopher, that's wonderful. And I'm going to say, you're probably not the first time to give me a pink slip, but what am I supposed to do with my life now? He looked at me and he says, Mom, run for Congress. Do what you did for me, do that for other children. And that's exactly what I'm intending to do. Thank you.
Real quickly, I just want to give everyone an idea of where we are in terms of time and the number of cards. We have about an hour left, and I am looking at about 28 cards. Now we'll try to get through everyone if we need to go over, but just to give everyone an idea of where we are in terms of time. Thank you. Yes. Oh yes, so our restrooms are actually located just out the doors that you entered. To the left, and then take another left, and they're in the lobby there, just in case anyone needs that. Thank you.
Hi, I am Pam Berry Santos. I'm a parent with a kid at USC, and I just have some concerns. My first concern is about how, in general, we're weighing everyone's opinion when it comes to education policy and standards. Despite the pervasive belief that everyone's opinion is as important as everyone else's, and the internet can make us all experts in everything, I don't believe this is the best approach to education or pretty much anything else. Beyond casting a vote on election day, in most aspects of life, we're not all equally qualified at making all decisions and not all experts on everything. That's why there are organizations and certifications that help others know who can do what and that they have ways of ensuring this. And those entities are not governed by the general public. Those are run by people in each respective field who best know what the criteria are for a person to do that job. Only others who are active in that field, who've been educated in that field, can make truly informed decisions. Their opinion and insight, whether I agree with it or not, based on any other reading I do at night on the internet about that subject, carries more weight than my opinion, as it should. I feel that way about education. Educators should be the ones making decisions about education. Great if they take our thoughts and our concerns into account, but in the end, they've spent thousands of dollars and thousands of hours toiling in a job that is truly underappreciated, especially in this state. They're the first to get the abuse and the blame. They aren't given the tools and the money they need to do their jobs, and they aren't given the power to make the changes. Instead, their ability to do their job is ruled by political whims, threats that more money will be cut and are moved to private for-profit pseudo-schools, and told that their abilities will be judged based on whether or not they can overcome everything that sets them up to fail. I'm here tonight, I'm involved, I'm educated, and I know I'm not the best person to make all education decisions for my child or for anybody else's. I recognize most of my strengths and weaknesses, and I don't profess to know education better than people who spent their lives becoming better at teaching our kids. For all the bluster about Common Core, it was developed in large part by nonpartisan groups and educators, people with experience and firsthand knowledge in education. Arizona tried AIMS for 20 years and that didn't work. We're still racing to the bottom in almost every measurement for education there is. The state has shown a complete disregard for the importance of education by choosing to inadequately fund education, including ignoring the court-ordered back payments for education budgets of years past that still have not been paid. And now elected officials at all levels of the state wish to dismantle years of work done with the primary goal of trying to improve education for the kids in Arizona. What I wonder is why shouldn't we take the concepts that work in other states that do better in educating their kids into consideration? The Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards are based on the Common Core, but it's been tailored for Arizona by Arizonans who are part of the education system. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's designed to try to help all kids, not just those whose parents are involved and in good schools and here tonight. Any improvement is an improvement. You have nowhere to go but up. Keep working to fix it. Don't demonize it and attempt to dismantle it without understanding all there is to know about it. There are kids in classrooms right now that can't wait another few years in limbo while politics takes its toll on their ability to compete outside the state's borders. That's my first concern. My second one is a question. Will there be any sort of progress report that can be put on the superintendent's page showing specific goals and what has been accomplished so far? Here, here. I can follow the media's reports about Board of Education battles, power struggles with the governor, lawsuits being initiated and voting against everyone else on the board to decertify teachers convicted of child sexual misconduct due to technical concerns about the process. But I can't find any specific information about tangible goals or any nuggets of progress having to do specifically with improving education in this state 5 months into your tenure. At my job, I'm required to submit a weekly report of accomplishments and any problems I've encountered. I'd like to see the superintendent's page of see this on the superintendent's page of the website. Also, at a previous location for the listening tour, and yet tonight I heard this, there was a mention that if there were any quick answers to questions, they'd be posted on the site. I went to the site, I see no answers, no questions, nothing. I'm up to the tour. The third one and my final one is basically just reiterating what everybody else has said. want to get rid of Common Core standards. What are you going to replace it with? I've heard nothing about any viable alternatives, and meanwhile, our kids are still in class. Thank you.
Hi there, that's all for me. As I listen to everybody else, an anomaly. I have no kid at school, I'm not an educator, I have no connection, I'm a business guy. I moved here 15 years ago, I owned a small business, I retired. I started working with a small nonprofit as I retired called Literacy Connects. That works in some school systems, and I started becoming involved in education. I was asked to sit on a panel. I interviewed 3 out of 5 elected people here for a roundtable, business roundtable for candidate endorsements. And I was interested in the education angle. So I asked people, how do you feel about education? We interviewed every elected official in the state, from statewide offices and all the local offices. Everybody's in favor of education. That's pretty cool. But then I do a little homework, and Arizona ranks 47th plus or minus 2 in funding, 47th plus or minus 2 in quality. So I asked the question, how can we have good education and not fund it? And I get 3 answers. Answer number 1, throwing money at the problem doesn't solve it. And everybody points to Washington, D.C. that spent $16,000 on its terrible schools. So hey, I'm a business guy, throwing money doesn't solve things, okay? 2, there's plenty of money in the system, it's being spent in the wrong place. Excuse me. Great, you simply can't afford it. So I mean, I listen to some of these things, I said, those are kind of interesting answers. I went back and I looked into them. Throwing money is not the right answer. Every state system that's in the upper 25% spends more than half. Every state that's in the bottom 25% in quality spends less than half. I'm amazed that we think we can produce a quality product without buying quality inputs for our business process. And I'm just aghast at that. And we can't afford it when we can afford tax cuts. And we can't afford to pay teachers. I'm just aghast. So I'm really trying to understand how people can say they're in favor of education and don't support it financially. When I moved here, I made friends with a guy who employed 250 people in Tucson, which is a pretty big business. He was in a construction business. He employed plumbers. He said, Bill, there's this bill coming up, it's called JTED, I want you to help me with it. I looked into it, I said, okay, Chris, I'll help you pass this thing. It's the most successful program I know of in K-12. As perplexed as I am at how we treat education, I can't understand why we would drive a state through the heart of JTED. That's all, folks.
Have Jason Freed, Dan Ireland, Scott Leska, Olga Taro, and Anna Henderson. And just for the sake of time, since we still do have quite a few folks who would like to speak, once you get to about 4 minutes, Ashley here will just kind of wave at you to let you know that you're at that point in time. Otherwise. And otherwise, go ahead.
I'm Ken Gill, I'm a permanent resident of Tucson. I haven't experienced my first 100-degree day unless this was it. I came down to Arizona every winter for 10 years, and I heard all winter long a drumbeat of criticism of public education. I got awfully tired of it. Now I get a chance to talk about it a little bit. And I'd like to challenge Superintendent Douglas to undertake a role that I suspect she's doing, but even more so. Assume the role as the chief advocate for public schools in Arizona. We're desperate for that kind of a positive message. I'd suggest two assumptions to guide us. First, assume that students really do want to learn. Maybe not all the time, but they want to learn how to read and write. They want to manage numbers, they want to become responsible citizens, and we owe them the right to do those things. Secondly, I think we need to assume that teachers teach effectively and efficiently. So we need an institutional setting that lets us do that, time and a place, the support of the community, even when compensated inadequate. I'd urge you to seek out outstanding student achievement across the state and tell those stories. I'd ask you to seek out examples of effective, inspired teaching and broadcast this work far and wide. I'd ask you to seek out school districts that are effective in managing instruction despite severe limitations. And there's no shortage of any of those examples. They lurk in every school district, every corner of the state, and they ought to be dramatized. It's time to counter the carping criticisms of public schools with the emphasis on the negative. It's time to stop depending on high-stakes testing as a means of evaluating schools and teachers and students. The citizens of Arizona, the Constitution and in recent elections have called for adequate funding for education. The citizens have. Unfortunately, the powers that be in Phoenix have not always responded in kind. As we reevaluate whether Arizona is truly in a state of poverty, can't afford a good education system. That's alleged by lawmakers and state executives. Let's at least honor students and teachers with some appreciation and respect. We all do better with positive reinforcement. Let your voice, Superintendent Douglas, be heard as a persistent, positive note.
Good evening. My name is Jason Freed. I come to you, I serve in a number of capacities, nationally, statewide, as well as locally within the Teachers Association. And I want to highlight a few points. Let's start with the notion, the fact, that our state has cut public education for 7 straight years. People don't quite grasp that. We're not talking about a cut and then we fill it back up and we cut it again. It's a cut on top of a cut, on top of a cut, on top of a cut for 7 years. And yet we're continuing to expect not actually similar products, we're expecting better products. The notion of that, the notion of let's trim the fat. You can't trim the fat anymore. You're onto muscle, onto bone at this point. I also want to note the difference between traditional public schools and our charter school system. It's not a level playing field. The community needs to know that. You need to take action to attempt to make these a level playing field. School districts take every single student, every single day, and teachers welcome them with open arms. And charter schools don't. They just don't. They are oftentimes for profit. They turn away kids at the front door. We have to find a way to even this playing field. Because then we compare charter schools and public schools, which, by the way, most of the time, public schools fare very, very well against those charter schools. We have schools that exist right now that students spend half of their day just playing outside in the park, literally. This isn't an exaggeration. And then you say, let's give them funding, not funding, but a greater ratio of funding than we give to our traditional public schools. That's criminal. That's really, truly criminal to the Tucson community. Let's talk Common Core. It's been mentioned that Common Core makes our students competitive nationally. It does better. It makes our students competitive internationally. That's where these Common Core standards really generate. It's some of the best education systems that exist throughout the world. Common Core is not the problem. It's just not. Implementation has been a problem because it's different from district to district to district. So implementation is something that needs to be addressed. Funding needs to be addressed. Curriculum that supports that Common Core standard, they almost don't exist, and when they do exist, school districts don't have the funds to purchase that curriculum. Those are major issues. But Common Core is an improvement. I can say this having taught for 15 years. Okay, we're not getting rid of Common Core. We shouldn't even be having a discussion. What we should be talking about is how do we bulk up this Common Core curriculum? How do we make sure that our teachers and our staff have the appropriate tools to use Common Core, expand it for our students, and really expand things for our students. Again, this doesn't just make them competitive within the state, within the country. These are standards that make them competitive internationally. So we don't do away with Common Core. It's good. And lastly, I want to talk about unions.
Yeah.
Unions are not the enemy. We are not the enemy. We are notified throughout the country. We are not the enemy. Please understand, look at the statistics. We've got all kinds of data to support this. Union members stay in their profession longer than non-union members, very specifically in Arizona and in public education. So these are our people. These are our leaders. These are our leaders as an AEA member sitting on a dais. Union members vote at a significantly higher rate. Union members are respected throughout the country. So I do just want to end by saying, please, let's not talk about funding public education until we really fund public education in Arizona. Then we can have a conversation. Let's have the conversation about throwing money at public education, because in the state of Arizona, it's never been tried.
Hello, my name is Dan Ireland, and I just finished my 11th year teaching in the Tucson Unified School District high school with social studies as well as exceptional education. I remember a similar kind of forum or something when a candidate came up, and the idea of throwing money at education was thrown out there, and someone from the crowd shouted out, "Well, you've never tried that one before," so maybe there's some truth to that. But I wanted to briefly hit on three topics. Ms. Douglas, a few months back, I don't know if you remember me, but you came to my classroom and I was teaching a culturally relevant class emphasizing Mexican American studies of U.S. history. And I applaud you and congratulate you that you, unlike your predecessors, decided to find out what we were really doing in those classrooms. This was my first semester teaching the class, and again, I applaud that you came in, saw my class, stayed for the whole class, talked to students, looked at the books, looked at everything there, and then decided to make an objective opinion on whether or not we were teaching students to hate white people. And so again, I applaud you that you went out and tried to found the evidence to ascertain that kind of idea. So I appreciate that, and I wish that your department would continue to work to find that out. If there are bad things happening, of course, we should stop them. We don't want bad things happening, but I like that you went and tried to find that. So that's my first point. My second point is regards to the Common Core, and I think we've gotten a lot of good comments so far. Like my predecessor, Mr. Tree just said, Common Core is not the problem, it's the implementation. As a teacher, and again, as someone that has to work with the Common Core, has read the Common Core and does the Common Core is great. Common Core is not a how, Common Core is a why and sometimes a what. Common Core is teaching kids to think critically, to analyze, to make those arguments, to ascertain information and analyzing it and bringing it to propagate their ideas. That's good, and that's what I think everyone in this room would say they need to have an education. The problem is the whether it's a lack of resources, forcing resources that aren't really in the best interest of us, so much as the test makers and the workbook makers. And to that regard, with high stakes testing, it's often been said that we do no child left untested. And as I think Ms. Swain said, we have had a lot of testing. We can count days upon days, multiple weeks that we've dedicated and thrown aside curriculum just to test, analyze testing, prepare for testing, sort through testing, and it doesn't do anything. It's a single data point, and anyone will tell you that doesn't accurately reflect what happens in the classroom. If you want a high stakes analysis of kids and what they're doing in their schools, they're called grades. I give them to every one of my students, and I attest whether or not they are meeting the standards of the curriculum that they're set out to do. So when teachers are empowered and capable of doing that, we get good results. And the teachers are the best judge of when a student should move on to the next level. And then when teachers are empowered to make those decisions, that's when we see success. And to that end, in order to empower our teachers, my third and final point is we need to do something to keep educators in the profession. And I say educators, because teachers are not the only ones out here doing it. You think it's bad living on a teacher's salary, try doing it on a teacher's assistant salary, on a register's assistant salary, on a high school monitor's salary. We have people that live in non-abject poverty, and they're working every day for the betterment of our students. They're integral to it. We need to do something to retain it. And it isn't just a matter of money, although it would be nice if I could afford my mortgage without a second job. But it's a matter of respect, and it's a matter of giving us the support and saying you have this test to do, that thing to do, this report to do, this thing to do, that thing to do, and you're going to give up every Wednesday and 2 Saturdays a month to get it all done in. That isn't the thing. You know, thank you. I'll go flip burgers and probably make more money in a few years. So please, what we need to do is show genuine support for the educators that are doing the jobs because they're leaving. They leave faster than anything else. Within 5 years, half of them will be gone. I'm lucky that I've made it through my 11 years. I'm kind of an anomaly. I look around at people that started around the same time as I did. They're not in teaching anymore. It's not that they're not teaching in Arizona. They're not in teaching, period. So please, we need to do something to address that. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Superintendent. My name is Scott Leska. I am a board member for the Amphitheater School District. I was elected 6 months ago, like you. And I have a couple things that I want to first thank you for is your fight against Common Core. Common Core is awful. I have three children in the school district, 2 who are in high school, 1 who is in 2nd grade. And it has become a chore to help teach these children. First of all, let me tell you, I'm an engineer. My wife is an engineer. And we are flabbergasted on how to teach our children common math because it's so strange. It's not teaching future engineers, it's teaching, well, I don't know what it's going to teach. The data collection that Common Core is starting to take and has taken hold of is also flooring. Common Core is about money and it's about power, in my opinion. The unions in Chicago and New York, the teaching unions that we're talking about today, rejected Common Core wholeheartedly. So it's not a partisan issue. It's as much left against it as it is right, and as much right for it as it is left. So what it is, it's ideologies about how to educate our children. Second thing is, yes, I agree with the underfunding of our education system. I know we have 49% of our budget, the state budget, going to education, but you know what? It's certainly not enough. I mean, I have a personal friend, a colleague I work with, whose daughter just graduated in political science, and she's wanted to be a teacher. And she graduated from U of A. Is she working here? No. She just got a job And her parents, my colleague, is taking her to Houston because they pay them double than what we do. And it's awful. We are losing more educators coming out of our colleges to other states than we're keeping here. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. Again, JTED funding. Not everybody's going to go to college. Not everybody wants to go to college. And are we given the opportunity to having children being educated in wood shop, carpenters, coming out to be construction workers, coming out to be great mechanics. We're dental hygienists, whatever. But we just cut it in our state budget. It's terrible. It's a tragedy to our college and career ready. We're really not preparing for career anymore. We're preparing that we want to put everyone in college, which is great. We should all go to college if we can, or if we can afford it if we want to. But gosh, if we don't, and we want to go into society to be plumbers, which are, by the way, one of the highest paid professions outside of college you can get, why not? They're going to be great taxpayers and great funders of our future educators and education and our children. So, but let me go back to Common Core. We're not going to be training those children because I was once a waiter, believe it or not, when I was going to college. And if we teach our children to do math by circles and counting and whatnot, and it takes 15 minutes to do a simple math problem of subtraction, how are they ever going to give change to someone who wants to get out of there and go on their way after they eat their dinner? Because waiters typically are their own cashiers. We're not teaching that, and that's a tragedy in itself as well. Last I'm going to say about teaching the test, teaching the test is awful. I mean, my children have 2 to 3 weeks of class time on how to take the test. What? That is 2 to 3 weeks of them not really getting educated. It's teaching them how to fill in a bubble and how to put their name on for data collection. It's teaching them how to, so the teachers will be able to keep that raise or get a raise or keep their job. It's about how much data can the state collect or the federal government can collect on our children and on our teachers. It's that's a tragedy. Now, I know the governor and Ms. Douglas, you are going to be heading, or the governor's not heading the new education standards, but the governor has created a committee with you on it. And I was selected, and I appreciate that working with you in the near future to create those new standards to get rid of Common Core. Unfortunately, you're off a good bill that would have opted us out right away. But I also want to empower parents. There is a bill that went through that failed as well, to be able to have our children opt out, or parents to opt out of these exams. As civil disobedience, I opted all 3 of my children out of every exam that was in my district. And parents in my district, I encourage you to do the same, because it is wrong what we're doing. It's child abuse. It's teacher abuse, and it is taxpayers. So thank you.
Before all this speaks, I do want to just remind everyone we have about half an hour left in our scheduled time, and so I still have just over 20 cards, just to give everyone an idea so that we can try to get as many people able to speak as would like to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Olga Charo, and I'm a parent of 3 kids. And there are a couple of things that I'm prepared statements, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to clarify. While I'm not by profession a teacher, I do believe that I am my kids' first teacher. And I believe that the teachers that I am fortunate to have my kids in school with are professionals, and I trust them, I trust my principal. And I know that in partnership, we are the ones that really make the difference in how my kids turn out education-wise. I also realize my kids are lucky to have that, and not every child has that. What's unfortunate with Common Core is my research, and those of you who know me, I have lobbied a lot at the Capitol. I've done a lot of research on Common Core, and there is no valid study that shows that Common Core, it's never been tried anywhere, it's never been tested anywhere. We're piloting the tests, we're piloting the standards, we're piloting everything at the same time. That's troubling to me. While a lot of the standards are good standards, they're also found in other good standards like Massachusetts, like California. While I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, we're putting too much stock into something that we didn't know what we were getting when we adopted it. Arizona signed on to Common Core through a memorandum of understanding and Race to Top application in January of 2010. The standards weren't available for anybody to lay eyes on until 6 months later. We, like other states, we were in a recession, and there were stimulus funds that we could get, and we've all heard repeatedly that Arizona is not throwing money at education. So I can see why at that time people in power decided this is a good thing to try. We were hoping to get $250 million. We only got $25 million. And for an entire state, that's an impossible thing to implement any education standards whatsoever. Just in my school district alone, there's 20 schools. And it's my understanding that the Arizona Department of Education kept half of that money for teacher training. So if you do the math, that leaves less than $5 a head to implement the new education standard for the entire state. It's troubling to me that we would just accept blindly Common Core. I've heard someone say that they're an international benchmark. They're not. Even the people who support Common Core no longer say they're international benchmark. It's interesting to me that the biggest funder of Common Core is Bill Gates. He's put $2 to $4 billion of his own money into Common Core, yet his children don't go to a Common Core school. I find it troubling that people in power care more about my 3 kids, who they will never ever meet, than for their own kids. So people who like Common Core will just, respectfully agree to disagree. But I want something that's proven. When people say, well, don't you want a doctor who has good standards? Of course I want a doctor who does that, but if tomorrow you change how doctors learn and say, you won't learn by doing, you'll learn by on computer or some way, wouldn't you ask the question? You would want to know that that person had the training. And that's what Common Core just doesn't prove. The only one study that was done was paid for by Bill and Melinda Gates. That's my critical thinking says that's not an independent piece of information. So when we talk about school choice in Arizona, I feel my choice was taken from me. I didn't let the wind blow me to the school district that I chose. I chose the same school district that I went to. I wanted just the same result for my kid, all 3 of them. But I think my teachers are being marginalized, and I think where the teachers union here isn't as strong as some of the other Democratic states, I think our teachers are speaking in whispers that they want something different, where their brothers and sisters in New York and New Jersey and all those other places are speaking up, and the rallying cry is, this isn't right. Common Core, like it or not, I think has led to a testing, no child left behind to the 10th power. I see a complete difference from my oldest child to my youngest child in the same school. They don't do the same performances. They don't learn to sing songs in their music class. And it's not because a heavy-handed district or principal, somebody said, no, you can't do that. They just don't have the time. My oldest child, just for April, because she's taking algebra as an 8th grader, adding up the math test, which I agree with, because that is a test that my teachers get the information right away to see if they're growing, if there's things that they're missing. They take that test 3 times throughout the school year. But with AZ Merit plus the A Science test, okay, I'll finish. I added up 19 hours of testing. So that's 19 hours of what else didn't she get to do? And I find that crazy. I find the emphasis on the school letter grade on the test to be unfair. I know of a school in my district that because they didn't test one English language learner who was sick that day and for whatever reason didn't catch it up, the school dropped the whole letter because of one student. So that makes the whole school and those teachers and those officials look like they weren't doing their job, and I know that's not the case. The last thing I want to say is just to address who wrote the Common Core standards. They were people affiliated with testing companies, and if anybody wants to look at the list, I have it. It's right off of the website. Achieve, National Governors Association, and CCSSO are private trade groups. National Governors Association is not what it sounds like. It is a private trade group. Governors pay money to belong, like a country club. They don't represent us. They're not legislatively representing us. They do this behind closed doors. There's not one piece of notes that you can read about the Common Core development. I find that too secretive. And I expect more from my children, and I am looking forward to Arizona stepping up and making improvements where we need to, funding education, and putting teachers as professionals back in control of their classrooms. Thank you.
I'm going to lead off the next 5 names. I have William Fox, Mark Hanna, Mike Varney, Carolyn Cox, and Peter Blankfield. For the next 5.
I'll get started right away since we're short on time. I'm Anna Henderson. I'm a native Tucsonan. I'm a precinct committeeman, Legislative District 9. And thank you all for being here. I'll skip the formalities. I'm here not because I have a child in school. My son is 30 years old. My story starts with nothing, and I am an academic excellence on paper, and I share the same profession as Senator Farrow. So I chose trade. I went to a private college, and I stayed here in Arizona. A lot of the things that were said here, I would echo Claire Morgan's points to the students, what you heard from the point of view of Common Core and its origins. I'm not going to reiterate. I'd rather focus on the actual student. I spoke in front of the Senate Education Committee, and again, I cannot stress enough that with what we're doing, we are not incentivizing and trusting and bringing forth the proper communication between our parents, our teachers, and what they're trying to accomplish. So we can talk around all day about the goal, but if we don't focus on the goal instead of focusing on funding, which I thought we learned our lesson when their child left behind, but lo and behold, we're bringing it back. So if you like an ugly rerun, we're here. And you cannot keep ignoring what's going on in the classroom and the children are speaking up. But just like you hear today, different arguments for and against. It's about individualism. Personal freedom comes through education, and therefore we hear about unions, et cetera, economic freedom comes from children who have had the opportunities for personal education, and it must be individualized. We should not keep trying to put everybody into a box with a label on it. They need options, and we need to trust our parents and teachers, open the lines of communication, give them the avenues that they need through whatever products or guidelines that we come up with, and I'm thankful for the new committee that's going to take that to task. We've got to stop doing what's easy for our bureaucracy, because that's what I hear. When I hear, if you do this, this, and this, then you'll get money. When I hear the students getting, if you do this, this, and this, then you'll get this whole gold star, blue ribbon, what have you. That's just not individual attention. And everyone learns differently. So we can talk about great programs like JTED. I don't think you should throw that away. But I don't think that everyone should be focused in one place or another. So let's get back to the individual incentives. Let's open up the communication and bring trust back into our classrooms so that people can be productive and they can excel. Thank you.
I'm Lily Fox. I'm a retired science teacher. I taught at Troya High School, which is just over the hill from here. What Lucy Messing had to say, I agree with everything she said. I agree with almost everything Jason Fried said. And the retired businessman who spoke about we shouldn't be driving a stake through the heart of JTED was exactly right. I have some kind of other issues, and I'm going to start the bottom first and go up. One is, we need management classes for superintendents. TUSD is a school district with an annual budget of $270 million a year. You need to have extensive management training to run a huge organization like that. The degrees that people get in administration at the University of Arizona and elsewhere don't have anything like the management training and financial training that an MBA would give you, or a degree in a master's in public administration. That's one of the reasons that school districts are notoriously poorly run in every state, because the people who run them don't have management training that they need. I'm not talking about business training, I'm talking about management training. No textbooks to take home. And TUSD, University High has textbooks. Every single kid at University High gets a textbook to take home. So get your kid into University High. If they're not there, you ought to go out and buy the textbooks just like you have to do in college, because the kids in the other schools, the IB program at Choya, those kids all have textbooks to take home. What that means is that kids today don't know how to figure out a math problem from an example. I was a science teacher. You do a fair amount of math and science. And I found the last few years I was teaching, my kids, no matter what I did to teach them from examples, couldn't take an example and apply that to an identical situation. And it turned out that for a number of years, we no longer had math textbooks to take home. That is where you learn how to solve math problems from examples. You were flirting with Jose, or talking to somebody in class, or you didn't get it, or you forgot it. You get home and you got the homework, you get the book out, it's got an example, you figure out how to do that. No more. They don't have textbooks to take home. They just have Xerox copies of problems. They can't read nonfiction because they have no experience reading nonfiction. We don't have science and history books for them to take home. So a science teacher has to make the hard decision: are we going to do labs? Am I going to teach, or am I going to have them sit in class and read? We've got to have textbooks in the classroom. Now, TUSD has enough money to buy textbooks, but we're not doing it. We spend more money in this district watering the grass, literally on irrigation, than we spend on textbooks. That is a sin. Now, back to the things I want to talk about. I agree with so much of what other people have said. This is one they're not going to say. We need to have a comprehensible budget. The budget format that the state requires school districts to use does not tell you where the money's going to be spent. It has a little bit about how many employees there are going to be, and it gives you the sources of funds. There is absolutely zero information to tell you where the money's going. You cannot look at the budget and tell if they're funding libraries. TUSD hasn't funded libraries in years. There's a lot of stuff TUSD has funded and hasn't funded. You can't tell it from the budget because it doesn't tell you where the money's going to be spent. Now, every school district has budgets that tell you where the money's going to be spent. They don't share those with the public. They don't give the stupid state format budget to their departments of schools and say, here, go spend the money this way, because it doesn't tell you where the money's going to be spent. Every school district creates budgets for their schools and for their departments. The board never sees those. They have no idea where the money's going to be spent. It is really funny to sit in the budget hearings and watch the board members not ask questions because they don't understand anything about it. They don't know where the money's being spent. Sorry, I'm trying to do this fast so other people can talk. Now, the other thing is we need regular report. The TUSD is kind of a good example. Their state format budget is incomprehensible. They're designed to be incomprehensible. Not the district's fault, it's the state's fault. Along about November, they finally published something called a budget book. That's what should have been required at the beginning of the fiscal year. That shows you where the money's going to be spent. The only problem is that's halfway through the fiscal year before they publish that. The money's halfway spent. Now, you need regular reports that show that the money is actually being spent according to the budget. TUSD doesn't spend its money according to the budget book. It spends it any old way. They quit. Sorry, you got to get back. We used to have an independent audit committee, and the audit committee was citizens, they're financial experts, who were supposed to be provided with a monthly report that compared how the money was being spent against the budget. Under Dr. Petticombe and continuing under Dr. Sanchez, who's sitting right there, the district started saying, oh, the software can't create those reports anymore. And Dr. Sanchez has stood up in public meetings and said, that's true. When I complained, he said, I have no idea where the district spends its money every month. Then he hired an efficiency consultant. Who published a report
and said the district creates that report every single month, and the board can't do their job because they don't know where the money's being spent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good evening, Superintendent Douglas and other panel members. My name is Mark Hanna. I am a recently retired college and career readiness coordinator with TUSD at Helena High School, and I'm the newest elected member of the Pima Community College Board of Governors. I want to welcome you to our college and to our first class Performing Arts Center. I hope someday you come sit out here instead of having to be up there and watch a performance. So I just wanted to tell you that something you probably already know, and that is that 80%, over 80% of the students, our incoming students here at Pima Community College, are not prepared for college work. We at Pima welcome them. Nevertheless, we welcome them, and we are committed to helping them be successful. But the trouble is, yes, there's Pima folks here, we're definitely committed to help them. But the drain on the resources of Pima, especially in light of the complete elimination of funding from the state for our college, affects all our programs. And I'm even more concerned about the students themselves. So if they're not prepared for college work when they get here, they are so much less likely to be able to move on and succeed at college. It's just a tragedy for many of these students. And not only are they not prepared academically, and that puts them behind, but they are forced to use up their limited resources to Pell Grant to pay for these remedial courses, and so that limits the amount of money they have to go on with their studies. So we can do better. You want these students to succeed. Pima wants these students to succeed. I want these students to succeed. So Superintendent Douglas, you can do better. We have the ability, you have the ability and the responsibility to really listen to what you heard here tonight and take action. I hope that's what will come of this evening, and I hope that the state of education in our great state improves greatly. So thank you very much.
As a quick reminder, we're looking at about just over 10 minutes on our scheduled time. We may be able to push a little bit beyond that, but just to let everyone know, we still have quite a few cards up here, around 20, so we'll try to get to as many folks as possible. Thank you.
I will speak quickly. Good evening, Superintendent Douglas and panelists. Thank you very much for coming out tonight and listening to the voices of Southern Arizona. My name is Mike Barney. I'm the President and CEO of the Tucson Metro Chamber, and I come representing 1,450 businesses and their 180,000 employees. I will speak to three areas. The first is JTED. You've heard many comments about the need to save JTED. My comment is this. This is a program that graduates almost 100% of its students. Often these are the workers who our local businesses need the most. Please fund JTED from grade 9 through grade 12. The second topic is K-12 education. When underpaid teachers have to spend their own money for classroom materials, we have a problem. When the majority of U of A ed majors go elsewhere to work, we have a problem. Increased funding is a must for public education in Arizona. My third topic is the Arizona College and Career Ready Standards, otherwise known as Common Core. I want to present part of those comments through the voices of other people. First, to set the table, 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day. As they retire, and there are 72 million of us, as they retire, younger people are going to be required to move up and fill the positions occupied by these senior workers, senior executives, and frankly, they are not qualified to do so in many, many cases. We are heading towards what one author on economic development, an expert on education, calls catastrophic full employment, where communities will be competing for qualified workers. Those that are successful will continue to thrive. those communities that do not attract enough qualified workers will see their businesses leave and go to where those qualified workers are. We cannot let that happen in the state of Arizona. The U.S. now ranks 14th in the world for education and attainment. There is no way for us to maintain our prominence as a major economic force or as a world leader when our educational attainment is 14th. Common Core, known here in our state as Arizona College and Career Ready Standards, simply seeks to put our kids on the world stage at a level where they can compete. I'll read to you now the comments of a gentleman by the name of James Kelly, a local resident, who recently wrote an op-ed that appeared in our local newspaper. He says, I am a fourth-generation Tucsonan, conservative Republican, and Navy veteran who is active in my legislative and school districts and a supporter of Common Core standards and K-12 education. I support public education with a commitment to the idea that a literate, self-sufficient citizenry is the best guarantee of liberty. Common Core, known in Arizona as College and Career Ready Standards, is the mathematics and language arts only. Newtonian math and the basics of literature and literary expression are its subject. In the U.S., a doctor, lawyer, architect, or real estate agent has standards of competency created from best practices with flexibility for changes in technology and new information. The common standards don't direct the curriculum or the teaching method. A doctor from Arizona is just as qualified as a doctor from New Jersey. Some schools of medicine may be more prestigious and have more specialized focus, but each graduate has exhibited common standards measured in a common way. Standards are not curriculum. Curriculum has been and still is regulated by the state and local school districts, not the federal government. Standards are not a methodology. Teaching methods are managed by local colleges of education. Measurement and documentation of measurement is not evil, it is a necessity. The next person I'd like to quote from is a gentleman by the name of Craig Barrett, former CEO of Intel in Phoenix. He writes, it seems that Common Core state standards detractors follow Lenin's maxim that a lie told often enough becomes the truth. Their most recent foray into trying to take down the effort spearheaded by the nation's governors and chief state school officers to outline what all students should know and be able to do in reading and math leaves us with no choice but to roll up our sleeves and yet again set the record straight. As a former engineering professor, the former chairman and chief executive officer of Intel, and current CEO of one of the highest performing, I think I'm getting the hook here, one of the highest performing charter school systems in the country, I can speak directly to why businesses and indeed higher education benefits from the Common Core and why concerns about the math standards rigor are misplaced. I will cut my comments about that short. Thirdly, I'd like to, I was going to read this, but in respect to other people who still need to speak, I'll direct your attention to a ASU Morrison Institute study that was done that polled citizens across the state of Arizona as to whether or not they wanted Common Core standards, and the results came back that about half did and half didn't. When they asked respondents, not the same respondents, but a control group, another half of the people they polled, they said, do you favor a set of common performance standards in our schools, and left the term Common Core out of the equation, that number shot up to about 90%. So this is a very highly politicized, misplaced battle against Common Core. I urge you to not only keep it, but to embrace it and move our state forward with higher quality, more qualified workers. Thank you.
Carolyn is next. We'll be able to push a little past our deadline so we can try to get some people in.
My name is Carolyn Cox, and I am just an activist in the community, very concerned about our schools. I would have to say that I agree with Scott Leska and the things that he said, and I also agree with the lady who was a couple of times before, I don't know her name, who talked about the necessity of management, which is very important. I believe that Common Core is a path to total federal government coercion, and I oppose it. The Wall Street Journal this morning says that Common Core will demand that teachers teach only climate change orthodoxy. Students have been taught to question. The science is not settled. The planet has stopped warming since the 1990s. And how dangerous is carbon dioxide? The current level is 400 parts per million, which is 0.04% of the volume of the atmosphere. And all plants need carbon dioxide. It appears that Common Core wants to indoctrinate young students instead of urging them to question and develop critical thinking. I just believe that the idea of Common Core and dictating the kind of things that the students should be taught and along the political lines of global warming is absolutely ridiculous. If you remember in the 1970s, we were worried about global food. Thank you.
Our next five, I would like to put here, Marion Pickens, Mary Gresham, Nirvair Khalsa, Kathy Sproud, I guess it's that one, and Robin Kawakaki. I guess it's that one, Kawakaki.
Good evening, my name is Pete Blankfield. I've been teaching in DUSD for 18 years, and I appreciate the opportunities, Ms. Douglas, for speaking to you. I do have to defend my superintendent here real quick. He tells us every week what he's done that week. We get it every week in an email, so. First thing I want to touch on is Mexican American Studies. They shared my classroom for 4 years at Rincon High School, and I was never once threatened by the teacher, the student. What I saw was good, critical thinking, and culturally pertinent education. I would like to say that I taught AP for 14 years. And I'm now a middle school teacher. I have never taught to a test. I'm never going to teach to a test. And I am trying to bring debate to the middle school level, TUSD, this next school year. That's a promise. We want our students to go to high school and start debate clubs in high school from Blue City. Grades are the #1 and only indicator of future success. Period. The end. No tests. I don't care how many you give. I don't care if it's SAT or an MCAT. It will not predict a student's success in the future. Only their grades will. Charter schools. It is not a level playing field. On the 101st day, the charter schools kick out their discipline problems. They go back to public school. They need the federal money when they kick the kid out after 100 days. Budget. When I started 18 years ago, there was a 3-tiered pay system. There was a bachelor system, there was a system for teachers with masters, there was a system for teachers with PhDs, plus a time and grade scale. Budget cuts have been going on way more than 7 years. Way more than 7 years. The first thing that disappeared in my teaching career was the 3-tiered pay system. Why on God's green earth would I want to get a master's degree or a PhD if I'm not going to be paid for it? I went and got the master's anyway. That drives teachers out. That does not attract the best and the brightest. If we're going to underfund education, stop talking about attracting the best and the brightest to the classroom. You're not going to get them unless they're the dedicated, the people that live on $900 every 2 weeks. Those are the people you're going to get. And we have to make up for the people that are just looking for a job. Because I work with people like that, and I just as soon kick them out. If we had a 3-tiered pay system, we'd attack the best and the brightest. One of my former students, who's the government liaison for Pima Community College, would be a teacher instead of the government liaison for Pima Community College, because he'd make more money as a teacher. Finally, nobody's talked about student accountability. It's ridiculous that a middle school student can flunk either science or social studies and still be promoted. That's a core subject. But yet, I cannot hold a student back if they pass math, science, and English language arts. They go to the next grade.
They're not ready to be citizens if they don't pass my social studies class. We need a credit system at the middle school level. Middle school kids need 12 credits to go to high school. They must pass their core subjects 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They don't do it. They go to summer school. They pay for it just like high school kids pay for it. Thank you very much.
I have Marion Pickens as the next person. If Marion is not here, then we'll move on to Marion.
She's here.
If Mary would like to go ahead, no, and we'll. Oh, Mary. Okay, so Marion again. Marion. No, we're gonna maybe try to push it until 8, but we're gonna have to start making the comments a little bit briefer. Sorry for that, but we want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. Thank you.
Marion Pickens, a resident in Tucson for over 50 years. My children have gone to all public school here in Tucson and graduated from the University of Arizona. I have been a teacher in the Tucson Unified School District for 20 years, but that was 25 years ago now. I was in the Arizona legislature for 10 years. So the whole time I've been here in Tucson, my concern has been the education of my children, my own children, children in the public schools, and I certainly was interested in what was going on for education when I was in the legislature. When I was in the legislature, that was when the time came when they said parents should be given more choices. And they did, the legislature did provide for the charter schools. But the system now has become absolutely out of whack, because in this whole idea of the parents given more choice, the whole idea was supposedly at that time that there would be enough funding for all of these choices. And now they've taken on even greater choices, where some of the funding is going for public, for private schools, parochial schools, a home school, and the whole funding system has become so out of whack. So I think that the legislature, my colleagues, please make sure that there is accountability and a way in which, if you want choices, there is enough funding for all, including the public schools. Now, one of the best things I've seen come ahead is this whole idea of a common core standard. I've seen so many changes in my years here at Tucson on how we're going to make the education system better. This is the first spark of real possibility. And so I urge you, superintendent and legislators, please do not let this, at least one good spark of some possible accountability and dependability of what we're expecting our students. This, if you support it and continue it, Arizona can go back to being a really top-notch education system. Please keep working.
Mary, that's next. Then near there, Tulsa.
Hi, thank you for taking the time for this conversation. I think we need more of these opportunities to hear from all the stakeholders in education. I think the most important issue in education, of course, is the children, and finding a way. Yes, Senator Bradley, you said and summed it up in your first few words, that we need to unite around the children and find a way for the grown-ups to stop arguing
so much and to unite together for the future. Sometimes I wonder what the conversation we would be having would be if we were really talking about what's best for Arizona's children and less about ideological differences. If we focused on what's good, what's already working in education, and made that the message that goes out to Arizona's voters so that they'll want to support education. What if all the people who care, like the people in this room, everyone is here because they care about the children, and regardless of their political affiliation, how they feel about Common Core, different ideologies, resolve to work together to truly make funding education a priority in our state, to see our children as an investment, an asset on our state's balance sheet, not an expense or a liability. What if our conversation was about children instead of politics? What solutions would we be able to envision if charters and districts and parents and government and businesses realize that we're partners and we're on the same team, we're not on opposite teams? None of us are the enemy. What if we focused on what we all want and our common goals? What I hear tonight is we all want high achievement for our children. We all want adequate funding for education. We all want respect as educators. We want prepared citizens who can contribute to our community and who can vote wisely when they get old enough. We want social and emotional support for our children and families. And perhaps the one common enemy that we need to unite against is poverty. A number that I heard this week that was shocking to me, I didn't realize, maybe my eyes have been closed. 50% of Arizona's children live in poverty. Most of the people here have experienced in our classroom the effect that that has, the obstacles that just the reality of poverty presents to children every day, the obstacles to their hope for the future and their path to an education. So I don't think any of us disagree with any of these things. We might disagree on our strategies to get there. But I personally feel like school choice is an important thing. I'm the director of a Montessori charter school, and like the man from the Waldorf school, I agree that we need to support that and not regulate school choice out of existence through standardization. Funding is the most important thing. I don't think Common Core is the issue. As a Montessori school, we haven't found it as, we've found our way around, that we can teach what we want to teach, but the testing can become a problem. But I think the most important, the other thing is we need to be a united voice and decide what is the story that we as people who care about children want to tell the public. And what story do we want to hear the voters? What story do we want the voters to hear about education? And what if all of us were in the same article on the same side instead of a different fighting voices? I think Arizona voters would feel more positive about wanting to fund education if they could hear that we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming here and being here and listening. My name is Kathy Sproul, and I am a master's level high school teacher, highly qualified to teach secondary English and math. I was born and raised in my K-12 in South Suburban Chicago, student taught in West Michigan, did 4 years in Houston, and I taught in TUSD, Marana, Sunnyside, Amphi, Eloy, and currently in a state of wicked charter schools of the West, I teach at what I see to be a blend of good charter school of the North and Native American charter school that serves underserved populations. A couple of things. First of all, if you ask me outright, does Arizona value education? I would say no. That Booth Bickett guy who was talking about the PhD and why you can get one, why even get any degree? Honestly, why even graduate high school? Because I consider this example. In 2010, 11, I got hired on in a local district. It was a good teaching experience. It was a non-Title I school, so they paid less. But I was a full-time ELL teacher, and my yearly salary with 15 years of experience and a master's degree was the same of a 21-year-old with a GED and 6 weeks of corrections officer training. So when you know, can you look me in the eye and say, we value education, but hey, you could make more money, keep people up. Like, sorry, teachers need to be paid. When I look at Arizona, I don't think, well, why are we so low? I think, how does Arizona manage to retain so many good teachers? Because I've met a lot of good teachers. Like, why haven't they all left? Second, what that Sarah earlier said about Common Core, yeah, follow the money. It's Common Core is a crock, in my opinion. And then what somebody earlier said about false dilemmas, it's like, well, yeah, it might be marginally better than our earlier totally crappy standards, but like there is a better way possible, like where we develop standards with our actual early childhood educators on the development team and the validation community, like it's an actual committee that is supposed to have input rather than just being used as pawns. Finally, I'd like to talk about the false. 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, finally, I'd like to talk about what's sort of been, I've watched it over the course of the last 15 years, a false narrative that's gone on in education. And the narrative goes like this. Our country is falling behind, which we're not. If you take our middle and upper class kids, they rank right at the top of the world. China's spending billions of dollars to make their educational system more like ours, to cultivate creativity. So that's false. And therefore, there needs to be accountability. And the teachers need to be held accountable, and the schools need to be held accountable, and we'll do it through standardized tests, and we'll have teacher evaluations based on value-added measures. Well, all of that went on. And so all of this accountability, but yet from 2000 to 2010, when we had high-stakes testing, achievement gaps grew. By 2010, we have A schools and F schools like 7 miles apart. We had identical standards, identical assessments. It did nothing to close the achievement gap. So my question is, all this accountability, who's holding test-making corporations accountable? Because I'm not allowed to look at the test. I'm not even allowed to glance at the test. Heaven forbid I lose my teaching certificate, and I could go make more money as a corrections officer. But my point is that you just spent $25 per student. I did the math, and I didn't have to draw a bunch of Common Core circles. And I figured it out. We paid $25 per kid, roughly, to take AZ Merit. What are you getting for it? What do you get? What does it show? Have we taken groups of similar kids from similar socioeconomic backgrounds? One gets high-stakes testing exposure, one doesn't get high-stakes testing exposure. Measure it and see who's ultimately more educated and empowered financially and psychologically and spiritually when they're 25. I mean, there's no evidence that high-stakes testing is doing what it claims to do. And it's proven that it didn't do it from 2000 to 2010, and now we just want to do more of it. It's like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So I would encourage you, and I echo the AMPI board member, I would encourage you to take a second look at it, because we're paying for it. What do we get? What do we get from that high-stakes test? And I would encourage you to opt out, and everybody to opt out. It's ridiculous.
I would like to see a video too, one last group of names. I have Robin here. I know she can ask him later on if you'd like to go now and wait until the end of this group. Yeah, I'd like to call the last few names that we'll try to get to. Sally Glennon, Alice Novoa, Diana Hill, Laura Layton, Andrew Wolanski. And I would like to note that everyone who may not have an opportunity to speak, we do have some other options for you to communicate with us, including written and including using our website and our emails as well. So if Sally would like to speak, and again, we have about 15 minutes left, so if we can try to keep comments brief so that at least the rest of these folks can get through.
Hi, my name is Sally Glennon. I want to thank you for having this tonight. Even though it's almost past my bedtime, and I didn't think I was going to be able to speak, the reason I want to thank you is it's really been a very positive and encouraging evening to me to sit in a room where so many people support education. And even though most of them are educators, there were others. And in this state, it's very hard to feel supported in education. From what happens in the legislature and the state government, having done this in Arizona now for 36 years, I really feel like the last few years have been difficult. And I really have felt that the educators who have come up here and spoken, I felt proud to be part of that group, those articulate and passionate people who teach our children. That was, again, I really appreciate that. So one of the ground rules was you wanted to know if we agreed with previous speakers. So I'd like to say that I agreed with all the speakers who supported the Common Core, because that's why I'm here. My perspective is that of someone who was an elementary teacher for 31 years and now has spent 5 years as an administrator. It's also based on my education, which is a bachelor's in elementary education, a master's in special education, a specialist degree in school administration. So I bring a certain level of expertise to the discussion of the Common Core. I began my work as an administrator in 2010, which was the first, which was the year that Arizona adopted the Common Core standards. I have spent a lot of time in trainings at ADE and through the FEMA Regional Support Center. I've learned about the standards K-12. I facilitated the training of the teachers in my district, making sure that they understood the standards and what kind of instructional shifts they would have to make sure that their students were successful in mastering them. I find the Common Core standards to be a thorough and comprehensive guide to what our students need to know and be able to do to succeed when they leave high school. And I think that's something we can all agree on. No matter what our students want to do, whatever their dreams are, whether they want to go on to higher education, whether they want to start a career, whether they want to go into the military, this is what we need to offer them. So I am puzzled when I hear that we need to get rid of the Common Core standards, that they harm our children earlier, that it's child abuse. I mean, seriously? This is contrary to what I have found after a long and serious study of the standards over the past 5 years. So, Superintendent Douglas, you said you can only make recommendations. You've got people with much more expertise than I working for you up in the Department of Ed, people on the Board of Education. Please listen to them. And please recommend that we carry on those Common Core standards. Thank you.
I have Alice next, and we will be wrapping up at 8. So we do have some panel members that will need to head out at 8. So just to let everyone know, about 10 minutes.
Superintendent Diane Douglas and committee. My name is Alice Mavoa. I was born and raised in Douglas, Arizona. I am a citizen of the United States born from 2 legal parents. I want to talk about ethnic studies and Common Core. These are the 2 biggest dilemmas right now our schools are facing. And I will start with ethnic studies. A rebuttal with Mr. Ramon Montaño. As a United States citizen with Mexican ancestry, we, United States citizens with Mexican ancestry, we do not, and we do not stand with the people. Shame on you. U.S. Code 18-1015, and this is mandate law on Section E, and this is paraphrasing. U.S. Code 18-1015, Section E, anybody pertaining to be a United States citizen and is working in the United States or getting welfare food stamps and access is 5 years federal prison with a $7,000 fine. Section F, anybody pretending to be a United States citizen and is voting in the United States and voting in local, county, state, or federal level, or initiative, referendum, or recall, is 5 years federal prison and a $7,000 fine. And every single section from A through E is federal. It's talking about fraudulent paperwork, and every single letter is. Yes, I will. And everything with that, guess what? Is a count. Okay. So now I'm going to the schools. So if you have any illegal children in our schools, every single student is committing a crime. The 14th Amendment does not cover. It does not cover illegal aliens, and it is a crime. We have over 60 million illegals in the United States. This is what's said by Univision. And I will tell you this, we can continue playing, you all took a note. Ms. Douglas, we put you in here, the voters of this country. I'm a Republican, I'm a proud Republican. We put you in because you promised that you would take out Common Court like this. Mr. Douglas, Mr. Tucson has no authority over you. He has to, but he's nothing but a Jesuit. And I did. No, it's not. Just one more. No, one that goes last. No. Now I'm going to tell you one more thing. I'm also a protege of the Word of God. Genesis 8. While there is planet Earth, there's summertime and wintertime. There is cold and heat. There is no global warming. And when it comes to Common Core, Bill Gates is not the boss of our children, and all the money he has spent on monitors and everything is not going to work, and it's not going to work in Arizona. Ms. Douglas, we stand with you, and the Aslan movement, looking to a nation of Aslan. It is a radical Islamic Mexican Catholic movement that is being taught in our schools. Mr. Sanchez is an Aslanero, and so is Mr. Montaño. Thank you.
I have Diane next. Diane is still here, otherwise we'll move on to, I think it's Andrew. Is that your name?
Hi, I'm Diana Hill. I teach early education at the University of Arizona, and I'm on the board of the Southern Arizona Association for Education of Young Children. I've lived here for 30 years. Thank you for this opportunity. Ms. Douglas and Representative Bradley, we really appreciate your editorial in the paper recently. Arizonans are not proud to be known as the state with the lowest funding for public education. Businesses won't move here, and hospitals can't entice young doctors to move to Arizona because of the instability of our education system. Employees in the prime of their career won't move their families here because they worry about their children's education. From birth through college, we fail to support the education of our future generation. And as you know, third grade reading level is how we predict our prison needs. Our failure to educate only supports the private prison system, so gleefully growing in Arizona. We need to fund our education system with cash and with intellectual resources. I urge you to start at the beginning of the education system. Universal, high-quality early education would best prepare children for living a life filled with learning, health, and achievement. When a child's self-image as a competent learner is established early in life, it cannot be swayed. Conversely, if a child's image is established as poverty-stricken, monolingual, detached from school, that too cannot be swayed, and they will be convinced that they are unworthy for the rest of their life. I would like to see the whole child care system overhauled. I'd like to see us abolish the puppy mills known to some as daycare. These for-profit centers are only caring for days and they neglect and harm children in their care. High-quality early education sets the pathway for all future learning. Our state cannot afford to continue to further underfund this much-needed resource, respectfully titled as early education. With early education in place, our talented teachers in elementary and high school will have students and families who are connected to the education process and excited to learn. When families connect with school and preschool,
They continue to be engaged as parents. This is where Head Start, PACE, and our public preschools and Quality First and NAYC accredited schools make a difference. High quality early education connects with all families and especially makes a difference in vulnerable populations. These are those who have the least access to education alternatives, such as charter schools and open enrollment. These vulnerable populations need to be able to enroll in local schools that are funded at a higher level if we are to equitably educate children. Let's put our best teachers in these vulnerable schools and pay them well. And after high school, we must provide a pathway to college. It's the responsibility of the state of Arizona to fund its land-grant universities and community colleges. I suggest we create a loan forgiveness program for college graduates to remain in Arizona and rebuild our state. We need to grow future educators. I'll get there. I encourage you to fund college education and fund future educators. We're losing our educators like flies and we are not making new ones. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Wolanski. I might consider it Providence of last. My applause won't be as loud just because there's not many people here. I'm a teacher in Tucson Unified School District. I teach in the Ethnic Studies program. I teach African American literature and African American government at Troy High Magnet School. I'm also a certified administrator of the state of Arizona, and I'm officially all but dissertation in my doctoral studies. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm going to talk real quickly. I agree with a lot of things other people have said. I agree with a lot of, don't agree with some of the things other people have said, but generally speaking, my politics don't agree with your politics, but I'm actually here despite all the extra work we've had to do thanks to the compliance work for our culturally relevant program. I'm actually here to thank you, and I'm going to thank you for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, thank you for doing this. And thank you to the rest of the citizens that have shown up and have enough interest in our education system to be here. Thank you for replacing the former head of the Arizona Department of Education. Could not have been soon enough for him to leave. So I appreciate that. And finally, we study a lot of amazing people, amazing ideas, amazing historical events in my classes. And one of the people we study, it's going to be an interesting comparison. His name is El Haj Malik Shabazz, which is more commonly known as Malcolm X. And Malcolm X had a very famous for many things, but one of the things, a saying he's very famous for is making it plain. I'm going to make it plain. And you have absolutely done that more than anybody in your current position has in probably 20 years or maybe even in the history of the state of Arizona. And I'm here to sort of repeat some of your words. For someone who has spent so much time discussing the plain meaning of or versus and as a justification to deprive schools of hundreds of millions of dollars to get his corporate cronies tax cuts, I wish he would use the same precision in looking at the plain language of the law, so on and so forth. A couple more. Current state of education in Arizona is poor. These are your words. And now we will be subjecting our children to the brand new, unproven, inaptly named AZ merit test. The name is the only thing Arizonan about the test, which was hastily chosen just 11 short weeks ago behind closed doors, once again without public discussion or vetting. All of these things are true, and I want to thank you so much for speaking truth to the people who are in charge and people who are in power in this state, who are manipulating the public and who are destroying our public education system, and for fighting for that. You have been vilified by the media unfairly, and I'm here to encourage you to continue to fight and to speak up. Continue speaking up on behalf of the students. Continue speaking up on behalf of the continue coming out and listening to the public. And then your final words that I'll quote on this is, I call on this legislature and the governor to stop the madness and put our children first. You haven't earned my vote yet, but you certainly earned my respect. And I hope you continue to speak up and to speak out loudly, because we need that in this state. Thank you. One more speaker, Laura, if you'd like to be very, very brief, we do our best to get out of here.
I will try, but what I have to say is very important. They are teaching hate against white people. They have been teaching it for 40 years. They've been teaching revolution, and I have proof right here. I've read 33 of their most used books, and I'm going to read you from 2 of them. I'm a retired paralegal. I worked for lawyers for 20 years. I'm a retired translator, interpreter of Spanish. I worked for 37 years helping Hispanics, and I loved it till I came to Arizona. When I came to Arizona, and only Mexican nationals would tell me, gobierno me dice que estamos aquí para tomar nuestra tierra, vamos a matar los gringos. My government tells me we're here to take back our land. We're going to kill the gringos. I didn't know what they were talking about. I'm from New York City. But I soon learned. Mothers came to me, several mothers, they told me black and white children are getting beaten up. A friend of mine is a teacher, he told me 2 children were murdered, and he thinks it was because of these books. And I'm going to read you from these books right now. This one is called Occupied America. It's called their Bible, but make sure you only get the 5th edition. That's the one I know for sure that they were teaching. Here I'm going to read 2 different things from here. The 5th edition, page 167. Their first plan to kill us is called the Plan of San Diego. The Plan of San Diego, it says the supporters would execute all white males over age 16. They murdered between 20 and 25 white males right after that was made. That was 1915. They're on their 3rd plan now, just so you know, and I have a copy of that plan if you want it. The next one was Jose Angel Gutierrez. He said at a speech, he told them, Gutierrez attacked the Gringo establishment angrily at a press conference and called upon Chicanos to kill the Gringo, which meant to end white control over Mexicans. No, it meant to kill the Gringo. And I looked up what he really said. This is what he said. This is his quote. If the worst comes to the worst, we have got to eliminate the Gringo, which means we've got to kill him. At the end of this, I'm also going to read you one of their leaders of nature, who has written when Mexico is planning to make this revolution on the United States, if I have time. Now I'm going to read you from this book, Message to Aslan. This is their 2nd most used book. Here, I am Joaquin, lost in a world of confusion, caught up in a world of Gringo society. I shed tears of sorrow, I sow seeds of hate. The force of tyranny of men who rule by farce and hypocrisy. In a country that has wiped out all my history, stifled all my pride, and a country that has placed a different weight and dignity upon my age-old burden back. Inferiority is the new load. With Los Niños, whose pride and courage could not surrender with dignity their country's flag to strangers in their land. And this is all based on lies. We paid them $28.2 million. My land is lost and stolen. My culture has been raped. This is in the school book. Robbed of our land, poverty and city living under the colonial system of the Anglo, they call us the Anglo, has castrated our culture. We demand a completely free education from kindergarten to college with no fees, no lunch charge, no supplies charges, no tuition, and the textbooks to be rewritten. Then they have lots of dirty words. They have the SH word, they have the A word, they have the BS word. And one note, especially to those young Chicanos, hard drugs and drug culture is an invention of the Gringo because he has no culture. We have to destroy capitalism, and we have to help 5/6 of the world to destroy capitalism in order to equal all people's lives. They asked one of the leaders of this movement, what is the closest ideology of yours? And he said communism. And they teach several books by Howard Zinn, there's an Italian, Antonio Gramsci, I have a degree in Italian also, and he was an Italian communist, and a lot of their books are written by communists. And it says here, any country based on capitalism is based on greed. Here they have the SH word, the BS word, the struggle for the land and the tremendous battle for the community control in every barrio that we exist in. Today I have a message for all people of Aslan. They call it people Aslan, they call it movement Aslan, because that's what they call the 7 states when they own it. To the children, the students, the painters of people in the prisons, the workers, the professionals, the critics, the politicos, which is the political people, the educators, the police, the campesinos, which means the people from the countryside, the masses of our people, and to the bloodsuckers, the parasites, the vampires who are the capitalists of the world. This is what they're teaching their children. The schools are tools of the power, the schools are tools of the power structure that blind and sentence our youth to a life of confusion and hypocrisy, one that preaches assimilation and practices an institutional racism. I won't read you any more of this, but I will read you just their plans to take over this country. This was written by one of their leaders at NECHA, August 27, 2011. And this says their group claims an Aslan war in the next 5 years. That's before August 2016. And they say, La Raza and Nature have already talked to Latinos, and Phoenix and explained that Latinos need to arm themselves for war. For generations, our people have prepared us to take back the lands of the Southwest that were stolen from our Mexican, it wasn't stolen, this is a lie, stolen from our Mexican ancestors. And Latino groups now believe, they mean the Mexicans is only a Mexican movement, believe they have enough people in states such as California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas to successfully wage a war on the United States. This is what they're teaching to their children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on.
I want to thank you all for coming this evening and for taking the time to share your views. Mr. Lansky, is it? My husband calls it making friends wherever I go. When I make my comments. So just one quick story I'd like to share, and I think it kind of reflects on what we've heard this evening. When I was on the school board, I started on the Peoria School Board 2005, and I made it my mission to tour every school in our district within the first 3 months that I was on that school board. And so I went to our alternative high school, and I'll never forget it. The principal came up to me and he waved his, literally, right his finger in my face and said, "Young lady, I want you to remember one thing as you serve on this board. One size fits one." And I think that's what we're talking about so much on this listening tour. Our children are blessings, they are gifts to us, but they are not all the same, and we have to find the best ways to fit all their different and varied needs. So that's what this evening was about. I look forward to being back in the fall. I invite you all to join me in the fall. I thank you for being here tonight, all of you. Please be safe, go home, and God bless. Thank you.